The mirror shattered under my fist, blood mixing with foundation as I stared at my sister accepting my trophy. Again, the Best Emerging Beauty Influencer Award, the one I'd spent 3 years building toward, the one she'd stolen with my exact tutorials, my lighting, my voice cadence. She even wore the signature burgundy eyeliner I'd pioneered. My phone buzzed with another notification. At Glam by Grace just hit 5 million followers. Grace, my younger sister, the one who'd watched me film every video from my cramped bedroom claiming she was just interested in sisterly bonding. The one who'd launched her channel 2 months after mine with my aesthetic, my techniques, and somehow all my sponsors. I watched her blow a kiss to the camera, her eyes lined in my signature style, sparkling with triumph. My manager had stopped returning my calls. My account was hemorrhaging followers. And Grace? She was announcing her own makeup line. My makeup line. The one I'd pitched to her boyfriend, who happened to be a venture capitalist. That's when the chest pain started. Sharp. Crushing. I couldn't breathe. The last thing I saw before everything went dark was Grace's Instagram story. A photo of the two of us as children, captioned, "Couldn't have done it without my inspiration." I died of a stress-induced heart attack at 26, alone in my studio apartment, surrounded by ring lights and rejection letters. But then, I woke up, in my childhood bedroom, in my 14-year-old body, with 12 years of memories that hadn't happened yet. I sat up in my narrow twin bed, gasping, touching my face with hands that were smaller, smoother, unmarked by the burn scar I'd gotten from a lighting accident in my past life. The walls were covered in posters of beauty YouTubers I used to idolize, would idolize, before I learned how cutthroat the industry really was. My phone, an ancient iPhone 6 that I'd thought was peak technology, showed the date. September 3rd, 2014. The day before I discovered winged eyeliner tutorials on YouTube. The day before everything started. "Lily!" My mother's voice shrilled up the stairs. "Get down here! Grace needs help with her homework." My chest tightened at the sound of my sister's name, but it was different now. Not the raw grief of my death, but something colder, clearer. I remembered everything now. Every stolen idea, every calculated move, every time she'd cried to our parents about how mean I was when I asked her to stop filming in my room. Every sponsor she'd poached by playing the supportive sister just trying to learn card. I also remembered something else. Grace had never been particularly smart, or creative, or hardworking. She'd been pretty, we both were, blessed with our mother's bone structure and our father's thick lashes. But she'd had no original thoughts. Every successful thing she'd ever done was copied from someone else. Usually me. In my past life, I'd spent years perfecting my craft. I'd worked at a drugstore to buy my first real camera. I'd studied color theory and face shapes. I'd practiced eyeliner wings 1,000 times until I could do them in my sleep. I developed my signature burgundy look after experimenting with dozens of wine-colored shades, finding the perfect mix that made brown eyes look like melted chocolate and blue eyes look like sapphires. Grace had watched all of it, learned from all of it, and then launched her own channel with a sob story about being inspired by sisterly love while I was still grinding away at 50,000 subscribers. But here's what I realized sitting in my childhood bed with 12 years of knowledge. Grace hadn't just stolen my techniques, she'd stolen my confidence. In my past life, I'd been so focused on the technical aspects, the perfect wing, the ideal lighting, the algorithm optimization, that I'd lost sight of something crucial. I was naturally beautiful, not in an arrogant way, but in a simple fact way. Our mother used to say I glowed from within, though she'd stopped saying it once Grace started competing with me. I had the kind of face that looked striking without makeup. High cheekbones, full lips, naturally thick brows that framed large, expressive eyes. In my past life, I'd hidden behind makeup, used it as armor, convinced myself I needed it to be worthy of attention. Grace, on the other hand, had a softer prettiness that faded without enhancement. She needed the burgundy liner to give her eyes definition, needed contouring to create cheekbones, needed lip liner to balance her thin upper lip. The irony was almost funny. I'd spent my past life teaching the world and my sister how to look like me. And then I'd been shocked when she did it better, because she'd been more ruthless, more willing to network, more ready to smile and flirt and manipulate. Not this time. This time, I had something better than technique. I had knowledge. I knew which trends would explode, which platforms to invest in early, which sponsors would actually pay, which friends in the beauty community were actually vipers. And I had something else too, the complete absence of insecurity. I'd died and come back. Makeup seemed trivial compared to that. I went downstairs in leggings and an oversized t-shirt, my hair in a messy bun, my face completely bare. My mother stood at the kitchen counter, scrolling through her phone. Grace sat at the table, math homework spread in front of her, looking up at me with wide, innocent 11-year-old eyes. "Finally," Mom said without looking up. "Grace has been waiting forever." I was asleep, I said calmly. "It's Saturday morning." "Well, she needs help with fractions. You know I'm terrible at math." In my past life, I'd huffed and complained and done Grace's homework while she painted her nails and chatted with friends. I'd been the responsible sister, the one who always helped, always accommodated, always made things easier for everyone else. "Sorry, I have plans," I said, pouring myself orange juice. My mother's head snapped up. "Plans?" "Mm-hmm. Meeting Zoe at the mall." Grace's face fell. "But Lily, I really don't understand." "YouTube tutorial," I said, pulling up my phone. "Here, this channel explains fractions really well. It's actually better than me just doing them for you. You'll learn more." I could see the calculation in my mother's eyes. She wanted to push back, wanted to remind me that family came first, that Grace was younger and needed me. But I'd given a reasonable solution, and more importantly, I'd said it with such casual confidence that arguing would make her seem unreasonable. "Well," she said finally, "I suppose that's fine. Grace, watch the video." Grace stared at me with an expression I remembered from my past life but had never understood. Assessment. She was evaluating whether I was still useful to her. I smiled at her, the kind of smile that didn't reach my eyes, and took my juice upstairs. The next few months, I did something revolutionary. Nothing. I didn't start a YouTube channel. I didn't experiment with makeup. I didn't spend hours in front of my mirror perfecting techniques. Instead, I focused on being 14. I hung out with Zoe, who in my past life had drifted away once I became obsessed with beauty content. I joined the track team, which gave me a healthy glow and lean muscle. I actually paid attention in school, particularly in business and marketing classes, and I stopped wearing makeup entirely. At first, my mother commented, "Lily, honey, don't you want to put on some mascara? You have such pretty eyes." "I'm good," I'd say, breezing past her. Grace watched me constantly, confused. In my past life, I'd started wearing makeup at 14 and never stopped. She'd followed suit at 11, copying my every move. Now, at 11, she was waiting for me to set the trend. But I didn't. I did, however, develop a skincare routine. I'd learned in my past life which ingredients actually worked: retinol, vitamin C, niacinamide, and which were marketing hype. I used my drugstore wages. Yes, I got the same job because it gave me product knowledge and employee discounts to build a simple, effective routine that made my skin luminous. By 15, I looked better than I ever had in my past life with full makeup. Clear skin, natural color, bright eyes. I wore my hair down and wavy, let my brows grow in full, used only tinted lip balm. And something unexpected happened. I became popular. Not beauty guru popular or socially popular. Boys noticed me, girls wanted to be friends with me, teachers complimented my natural beauty and healthy glow. I made varsity track, I got invited to parties. Grace, meanwhile, had started experimenting with makeup at 12, trying to figure out the formula I'd apparently discovered. But without my guidance, without my tutorials to copy, she was making the classic mistakes. Too much foundation, poorly blended eyeshadow, harsh eyeliner that made her eyes look smaller. My mother tried to get me to help her. "Lily, your sister is struggling with her makeup. Could you show her what you do?" "I don't wear makeup, Mom." "Yes, but you used to be so interested in it." "I grew out of it," I said with a shrug. "Grace, you should just let your natural beauty shine through. Makeup isn't everything." The look on Grace's face was priceless. Frustration mixed with confusion. She couldn't copy what I wasn't doing. And the more she piled on makeup to try to achieve something, the worse she looked compared to my effortless, natural appearance. By 16, the divide was stark. I was thriving. Honor roll, track captain, homecoming court, early acceptance to USC's Marshall School of Business. My Instagram, which I'd started casually, posting trackside selfies and study aesthetic photos, had grown organically to 100K followers who loved my natural beauty and authentic content. Grace was struggling. Average grades, few friends, heavy makeup that her classmates mocked, a desperate Instagram presence that screamed, trying too hard. And I felt nothing, no guilt, no sympathy, just cold satisfaction that she couldn't steal from me this time because there was nothing to steal. The real turning point came during my senior year of high school. I was in my room studying for AP exams when Grace knocked on my door. She was 16 now, and the years hadn't been kind, not because she wasn't pretty. She was, but because the desperation showed. Her makeup was thick, her clothes try-hard, her entire energy needy. "Lily?" she said softly. "Can we talk?" I looked up from my economics textbook. "Sure." She came in and sat on my bed, picking at her nail polish. Burgundy, I noticed. Some things never changed. I need your help." "With what?" "I want to start a YouTube channel about beauty and makeup. I think I could be really good at it, but I don't know where to start." She looked at me with pleading eyes. "You're so good at Instagram and you understand social media. Could you help me?" This was the moment. In my past life, I'd been the one asking for help. Not from Grace, but from various people who'd either ignored me or given me bad advice. I'd clawed my way up alone, learning everything through trial and error. Now Grace was asking me for the blueprint to steal my life, again. Except she didn't know she was asking for a blueprint I wasn't using anymore. I could have said no, could have told her to figure it out herself. But I had a better idea. "Sure," I said, smiling. "I'll help you." Over the next 3 months, I taught Grace everything. Not the real secrets of social media success, the algorithm hacks, the networking strategies, the sponsorship navigation I'd learned in my past life. No, I taught her the surface level stuff. The basic things everyone knows, but that don't actually matter. Post consistently, am I told. Her. 3 times a week minimum. Use good lighting, I advised, while subtly directing her toward a setup that was technically correct but unflattering to her face shape. Find your signature style, I suggested, knowing full well that she had no internal compass for style. She'd always just copied mine. I watched her film dozens of videos, makeup tutorials that were technically competent but soulless, product reviews that were thorough but boring, get ready with me content that felt forced and fake. She'd show me each video before posting. "What do you think?" "It's great," I'd lie. Very professional, very polished. What I didn't tell her, polished was boring. Professional was forgettable. The beauty community in 2018 was moving toward authenticity, toward personality, toward creators who felt like friends rather than instructors. Grace's channel, at Glam by Grace, yes, she chose the same name, some destinies were apparently fixed, launched in January of my freshman year at USC. It flopped immediately. She'd spend hours on perfectly edited videos that got 200 views. She'd collaborate with other small creators who were equally boring. She'd post inspirational captions that got 3 likes. Meanwhile, my casual Instagram, photos of USC campus, study sessions at coffee shops, the occasional bare-faced selfie, continued growing. 500K followers. Brand deals with skincare companies who loved my natural aesthetic. Invitations to influencer events. And I wasn't even trying. That was the kicker. In my past life, I'd burned myself out chasing success. Now, success was chasing me, and I was casually fielding offers while focusing on my business degree. Grace, meanwhile, was spiraling. She'd gained weight from stress eating, which made her more self-conscious, which made her wear more makeup, which made her look worse. She'd developed acne from sleeping in heavy foundation. Her Instagram was a graveyard of try-hard posts with pitiful engagement. My mother blamed me, of course. You could help her more, Lily. You know about this stuff. I really don't, Mom. I just post photos sometimes. Grace is the one doing serious content creation. But you're so successful. I think people just relate to the authenticity, I said, knowing the word would sting. Because there was nothing authentic about Grace. There never had been. She was a shell waiting for someone else to fill her with personality. By my junior year at USC, I'd pivoted slightly. My business professors had noticed my social media presence and suggested I document my entrepreneurship journey. So I started a second Instagram focused on business content, how to negotiate brand deals, how to understand contracts, how to build a personal brand. It exploded. Suddenly, I wasn't just a pretty girl with good skin. I was a young businesswoman, a marketing expert, an entrepreneur. I got invited to speak at conferences, I consulted for startups, I was offered a book deal, and through it all, I never wore makeup. Not once. My professional headshots showed me bare-faced with a confident smile. My speaking engagements featured me in blazers and minimal jewelry, my natural features on full display. My brand became, you don't need a mask to be successful. The irony wasn't lost on me. In my past life, I'd hidden behind makeup and still failed. Now I wore nothing and succeeded beyond my wildest dreams. Grace, 21 and still living at home, had given up on her channel. Last I'd checked, her final video, Why I'm Taking a Break from YouTube, had 47 views. She'd gained admission to community college but dropped out after a semester. She worked retail at the same drugstore I'd worked at as a teen, which felt like poetic justice. We barely spoke anymore. At family dinners, she'd stare at me with barely concealed resentment, while our mother bragged about my accomplishments to anyone who would listen. The same mother who used to sigh in exasperation when I wanted to film videos in my bedroom, who used to tell me to stop wasting time on the internet and focus on real life. Lily's been featured in Forbes 30 Under 30, Mom would crow. Lily's consulting for a major beauty brand, and she doesn't even wear makeup. Can you imagine? Lily's investing in startups now. My daughter, the entrepreneur. Grace would push food around her plate and say nothing. And I'd smile politely, making small talk, pretending I didn't see the devastation in my sister's eyes. Because here's the truth I'd learned. Grace wasn't evil. She was just weak. She'd been handed every advantage, the same genetics, the same family, the same opportunities, and she'd squandered it by never developing her own identity. She'd thought copying me was the path to success, not realizing that what made me successful wasn't the eyeliner or the lighting or the camera angles. It was the authenticity, the work ethic, the resilience, the genuine love for what I did. And you can't copy that. You can only be it. The real revenge came during my senior year at USC. I was 22, Grace was 24, and I'd just been approached by a major venture capital firm about investing in a startup. Not just any startup, a beauty education platform called Beauty Basics that would offer legitimate makeup education, skincare science, and business training for aspiring beauty entrepreneurs. They wanted me as a co-founder and the face of the brand. The meeting was at a high-rise in downtown LA. I dressed in my signature style, well-tailored pants, a crisp white shirt, minimal jewelry, not a trace of makeup. My skin glowed from years of proper care. My hair fell in natural waves. My confidence was palpable. I walked into the conference room and froze. Sitting at the table in an expensive suit that couldn't hide his receding hairline and stress weight was Marcus Chen, Grace's ex-boyfriend. The venture capitalist who, in my past life, had funded Grace's makeup, lined with my stolen pitch. He stood when he saw me, his face cycling through shock, recognition, and something like fear. "Ms. Morrison," he said formally, "thank you for coming." I smiled, taking my seat. "Thank you for the opportunity. Though I have to say I'm surprised. Don't you usually invest in beauty brands rather than education platforms?" "We're diversifying," he said quickly, too quickly. "The beauty education space is underserved, and your background in both business and social media makes you an ideal partner." What he didn't say, his last major investment, a makeup line launched by an influencer with 5 million followers, had crashed and burned spectacularly when it came out that she'd plagiarized content and misled investors about her engagement rates. He'd nearly lost his job over it. I'd read about it in industry news. The influencer's name hadn't been mentioned, but I'd done some digging. It wasn't Grace. She'd never gotten big enough to attract that kind of funding in this timeline. But it was someone like her, all flash, no substance, built on a foundation of theft and lies. Marcus was gun-shy now. He wanted someone real, someone authentic, someone who'd built their success honestly, someone like me. "I'm interested," I said, pulling out my pitch deck. "But I have some conditions." We negotiated for 3 hours. By the end, I'd secured a 40% equity stake, full creative control, and a seat on the board. The platform would launch in 6 months with me as the face and a team of legitimate educators behind the scenes. Beauty Basics would teach people how to do makeup, yes, but more importantly, it would teach them how to build a brand ethically, how to create original content, how to succeed without stealing. As I left the building, my phone rang. Mom. "Lily, I have the most wonderful news. Grace just got a job interview at a marketing agency. It's entry level, but it's something. Isn't that wonderful?" I stopped on the sidewalk, looking up at the LA skyline. "That's great, Mom. I'm happy for her." And weirdly, I was. Not happy in a warm, fuzzy way, but satisfied. Grace was finally taking baby steps toward building her own life. It was 24 years late and several tax brackets below where she could have been, but it was something. "She asked if you had any advice," Mom said hesitantly. "For the interview." I thought about it. Thought about all the advice I could give. The real valuable, hard-won knowledge from 2 lifetimes of experience. "Tell her to be herself," I said finally. "Authenticity is everything in marketing." There was a pause. That's it? That's it. Because it was true. And also because Grace had no idea who she was. She'd spent her entire life being a reflection of other people, a copy of a copy. Now she'd have to figure out her own identity. It would probably take years. It would probably be painful. She'd probably fail many times before she succeeded even a little, just like I had. In my first life. The difference was I'd done it while people were actively sabotaging me. Grace would have to do it with all the advantages I'd never had: a supportive family, financial security, and no one stealing her work. "Okay," Mom said, confused. "I'll tell her. Are you coming to dinner Sunday?" Wouldn't miss it. Beauty Basics launched on a Tuesday in October, exactly 6 months later. We'd kept it under wraps, building in stealth mode, signing up educators, and creating content libraries. The platform was beautiful, clean interface, comprehensive courses, fair pricing. Everything was above board, properly licensed, ethically sourced. The launch campaign was simple. Me, barefaced, looking directly at the camera. For years, the beauty industry has told you that you need products to be beautiful, that you need to look like someone else to be worthy, that success means copying what works rather than creating something original. I'm here to tell you that's bullshit. Beauty Basics is different. We teach you techniques, yes, but more importantly, we teach you how to develop your own style, your own brand, your own path to success. Because the most beautiful thing you can be is yourself. The video went viral, 50 million views in 3 days. Every major publication covered it. Beauty influencer disrupts industry by rejecting makeup. The barefaced revolution, how one woman is changing beauty standards. USC graduate launches education platform that challenges beauty norms. We hit 1 million users in the first month. By month 3, we'd partnered with major brands who wanted to be associated with our ethics-first approach. By month 6, we were valued at $100 million. I was 23 years old, a multimillionaire, and I'd never been happier. Sunday dinner at my parents' house had become a monthly tradition. I drove up in my new Tesla, practical, I'd told myself, but really I just liked how it felt, and found the house in its usual state of comfortable chaos. Grace met me at the door. She looked different, better. She'd finally learned to do her makeup properly, light coverage, subtle enhancement, nothing too heavy. She'd also lost some weight, though not in the desperate way of before. She looked healthy, almost happy. Hey, she said quietly, can we talk before dinner? My guard went up immediately, but I nodded. We went to the back porch, the same place where in my past life she'd told me she was launching her makeup line, my makeup line, with Marcus's funding. I've been wanting to say something for a while, Grace started, not meeting my eyes. And with everything that's happened with your platform, I can't put it off anymore. I waited. I'm sorry, she said finally. For for everything. For always comparing myself to you. For trying to compete with you. For being jealous and bitter, and her voice cracked. For wasting so many years trying to be you instead of figuring out this wasn't what I'd expected. In my past life, Grace had never apologized, never even acknowledged what she'd done, but then in my past life, she'd succeeded. Winners rarely apologize. I watched your launch video like 50 times, she continued, and every time I kept thinking about how I spent my whole life trying to copy you, your style, your interests, your path, and I never once stopped to ask myself what I actually wanted. What do you want? I asked. She laughed, a wet sound. I don't know, that's the fucked up part. I'm 24 and I have no idea who I am. I should have felt triumphant. This was my revenge, wasn't it? Grace broken and lost while I soared, but instead I just felt tired. You want to know what I learned? I said. After everything? She nodded. The people who succeed aren't necessarily the most talented or the prettiest, or even the hardest working. They're the ones who know who they are, who own it completely, flaws and all, who stop trying to be someone else and just commit to their own weird path. That's easy for you to say. You've always known who you were. I almost laughed. If only she knew. But the truth of my rebirth, my death, my second chance, that was my secret. My unfair advantage. Grace, you're 24. Most people don't figure their shit out until their 30s. You have time. But you have to actually try. Not try to be me, or try to be some influencer you follow, or try to be what you think people want. Just try to be Grace. I don't know how. Then figure it out. That's the whole point. Mom called us in for dinner. As we stood, Grace touched my arm. For what it's worth, she said, I'm proud of you. What you've built. How you've stayed true to yourself. I wish I'd been a better sister. Something in my chest loosened slightly, not forgiveness exactly, but maybe the beginning of letting go. You still can be, I said. Over the next year, Grace did something surprising. She actually tried. She quit the marketing agency after 3 months. It wasn't right for her. She enrolled in culinary school instead. Turned out she loved cooking, had always loved it, but had never pursued it because it wasn't glamorous enough. She started a food blog that was actually good. Unpretentious, focused on simple recipes for busy people, filled with her own voice rather than some imitation of what she thought that food blogging should be. She cut her hair short, stopped wearing as much makeup, gained weight, and stopped apologizing for it. Started dating a sous chef who appreciated her for who she actually was. She became a person. Not a copy, not a competitor, just Grace. And weirdly, as she found herself, she became prettier. Not in a conventional influencer way, but in the way that confidence and self-acceptance always make people attractive. We'd never be close. Too much history, too much hurt, on both sides, though she didn't know the full extent of what she'd done in another timeline. But we could be cordial, could have family dinners without tension, could even occasionally give each other genuine compliments. Your coq au vin recipe was great, I'd say. Your interview on NPR was incredible, she'd respond. Baby steps. Beauty Basics continued to grow. We expanded internationally, launched a scholarship program for underprivileged aspiring beauty professionals, partnered with dermatologists to add medical-grade skincare education to our platform. I hired Zoe as our head of community management. I recruited several creators I'd admired in my past life, before they got big and ego-driven. I built the kind of company I'd wished existed when I was starting out. ethical, supportive, focused on education over exploitation. And through it all, I never wore makeup. Not to board meetings, not to press events, not to the Met Gala when I was invited as a guest of honor. My bare face became my brand, my statement, my revenge against an industry that had once told me I wasn't enough. By 25, I was worth $500 million. Beauty Basics had gone public, and my equity stake made me one of the youngest self-made female CEO billionaires in history. Forbes did a cover story. Time named me one of the 100 most influential people. I bought a house in the Hollywood Hills with a view of the entire city, the city where I died alone and come back to conquer. I dated occasionally successful men who were intimidated by my success until they weren't worth my time. I focused on building my empire, on disrupting an industry that valued fakery over authenticity, on creating opportunities for people like my past life self who just needed a fair shot. And every morning, I woke up, looked in my mirror, the same mirror I'd shattered in my past life, though this version was intact and expensive, and smiled at my bare face. No burgundy eyeliner, no foundation, no mask, just me. Finally, completely, triumphantly me. The call came on a Tuesday morning, 3 years after Beauty Basics launched. I was in my home office reviewing acquisition proposals when my phone lit up with an unknown number. Ms. Morrison, this is Detective Sarah Chen with the Los Angeles Police Department. We're investigating a fraud case and your name came up. Do you have time to come down to the station? My blood went cold. Fraud? I'd been meticulous about everything, every contract, every deal, every disclosure. Beauty Basics was clean. Of course, I said. Can you tell me what this is regarding? It's about a former beauty influencer named Vanessa Kim. She's been running an elaborate scheme stealing content and misrepresenting engagement numbers to defraud investors. One of her victims mentioned you might have information. Vanessa Kim. I knew the name, a mid-tier influencer who'd approached me about collaboration a year ago. I turned her down because something felt off about her metrics. I'm happy to help however I can, said. At the station, Detective Chen walked me through the case. Vanessa had built her entire channel on stolen content, fabricated screenshots, and bought followers. She'd defrauded investors out of $3 million before someone finally investigated her claims. The thing is, Detective Chen said, one of her investors is claiming he did his due diligence by comparing her to other influencers in the space, including your sister, Grace Morrison, who allegedly had a similar trajectory. My stomach dropped. My sister? Grace Morrison, at Glam by Grace. According to Marcus Chen, the investor, she was one of the success stories he used as a comparison when evaluating Vanessa. But when we looked into it, Grace's channel never actually succeeded. It failed years ago, which made us wonder, why would Marcus Chen cite her as a success story unless he had some other connection to her? Oh. Oh no. In my past life, Marcus and Grace had dated. She'd used their relationship to get funding for my stolen makeup line. But in this timeline, I'd assumed that never happened. Grace had never succeeded, so there would have been nothing for Marcus to fund. Except what if they had dated? What if Grace had pitched him something, maybe not a makeup line, but something, and he'd turned her down? What if years later, when looking for influencers to compare to Vanessa, he'd deliberately inflated Grace's past success to make his current due diligence look more thorough? I need to be honest with you about something, I said slowly. My sister and I had a complicated relationship when we were younger. She tried to launch a beauty channel and it failed. If Marcus Chen is claiming it succeeded, he's either mistaken or lying. But I don't know why he would. Detective Chen nodded, making notes. Would you be willing to testify to that if needed? The defense is claiming Marcus Chen was negligent in his due diligence, and if he was fabricating comparison data? Absolutely. I'll provide whatever documentation you need, screenshots, archives, analytics. Grace's channel was a failure. That's just a fact. The case went to trial 6 months later. I wasn't called to testify. They had enough evidence without me. But I attended every day of proceedings. Marcus Chen, it turned out, had been running a sophisticated scheme for years. He'd invested in multiple beauty influencers, inflating their success in pitch meetings to other investors, then using those inflated numbers to justify new investments. It was a house of cards built on fabricated metrics and false comparisons, and Grace's name was all over his pitch decks. In his telling, at Glam by Grace had been a moderate success. 500K followers, decent engagement, brand partnerships, all lies. But lies that had helped him defraud other investors by making his due diligence appear more thorough than it was. Grace was called to testify. I watched her take the stand in a simple dress, her hair pulled back, minimal makeup. She looked terrified. "Ms. Morrison," the prosecutor said, "Marcus Chen has cited your channel as one of his success stories. Can you describe the reality of it, Glam by Grace's performance?" Grace's voice was steady but quiet. "It was a failure. I had maybe 10,000 followers at my peak, most of them bought bots. My videos got a few hundred views each. I never had any brand partnerships. I gave up after about a year and a half." "Did you ever have a personal relationship with Marcus Chen?" She hesitated, then nodded. "We dated briefly when I was 22, about 6 months. I asked him to invest in some beauty projects I had ideas for. He said no. We broke up shortly after." "Did you ever give him permission to use your channel as an example of success in his pitch materials?" "No, I didn't even know he was doing that until the police contacted me." I watched Marcus's face as Grace testified. He looked furious, betrayed, like she'd somehow wronged him by telling the truth. And I realized he'd probably convinced himself his version was true, that Grace had been successful, that his investments were sound, that the fabrications were just minor exaggerations. That's what thieves and liars do. They rewrite history to justify their actions, just like Grace had in my past life, claiming she was inspired by me while stealing every original thought I'd ever had. The jury deliberated for 3 days. Marcus Chen was found guilty on multiple counts of fraud and sentenced to 8 years in prison. Vanessa Kim got 6 years. The other investors in the scheme either pleaded out or were still awaiting trial. Grace and I left the courthouse together. Media swarmed us. I was recognizable now, and my connection to the case made it newsworthy, but my security team cleared a path to my car. "I'm sorry," Grace said once we were safely inside. "I had no idea he was using my name like that. If I'd known—" "It's not your fault," I said, and I meant it. "Marcus made his own choices. You just happened to be a convenient lie." She laughed bitterly. "Story of my life. Being someone else's convenient lie." "Hey," I turned to look at her. "That's not who you are anymore. You're a chef now, a good one. You have your own thing." "Yeah." She smiled slightly. "Say, I do, don't I?" We drove in silence for a while. Then Grace said, "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Do you ever wish things had been different between us when we were younger?" I thought about my past life, about dying alone, betrayed, convinced I was worthless, about waking up with a second chance and using it to become everything I'd been meant to be. "No," I said honestly. "Everything happened exactly as it should have." The media coverage of the trial was intense. My name was mentioned in every article, always with the same framing. Self-made billionaire Lily Morrison, whose younger sister was unknowingly cited in fraud scheme. It generated a new wave of interest in beauty basics. People loved the narrative. Successful older sister defends younger sister, family loyalty, triumph over adversity. They didn't know the real story, the competition, the resentment, the years of distance. But they didn't need to. The public story was close enough to true. Grace's food blog got a boost too. Turns out people were curious about this chef whose name had been dragged into a fraud trial. Her follower count jumped from 50,000 to 500,000 in a week. She started getting approached by cooking shows and food brands. "This is so weird," she told me over coffee. "I'm getting famous for being tangentially related to a crime." "Welcome to the internet," I said. "Use it. You've got a real thing now. Good recipes, authentic voice. Build on it." "I don't know if I want to be famous." "Then don't be. Or be famous on your terms. That's the whole point." She studied me over her latte. You're different than you used to be. How so? More at peace, I guess. Like you figured something out that the rest of us are still working on. If only she knew. By 30, I'd accomplished everything my past life self had dreamed of and more. Beauty Basics was valued at $5 billion. I'd invested in a dozen other startups, all focused on authenticity and ethical business practices. I'd written a best-selling book about building a personal brand without selling your soul. I'd become a sought-after speaker, advisor, and mentor. And I still didn't wear makeup. My bare face had become iconic. People recognized me everywhere, the woman who'd disrupted beauty by rejecting beauty standards, the billionaire who looked like herself. Grace was doing well, too. She'd opened her own restaurant, a cozy place in Santa Monica that served elevated comfort food. Critics loved it. It was profitable but not flashy, successful but not stressful. She'd found her lane and was content to stay in it. We had dinner together once a month, sometimes with our parents, sometimes just the two of us. We talked about food, business, family gossip. We never discussed the past, not the real past, the one where she'd stolen my life, and not the semi-fictional past where we'd been competitive sisters who'd eventually found peace. Some things were better left unsaid. The invitation arrived on a Thursday. You're invited to speak at the inaugural Beauty Industry Ethics Summit. The keynote speaker, me. The panel moderator, also me. The event organizer, a nonprofit I'd funded specifically to create industry standards for authenticity and proper attribution. This was it, the culmination of everything I'd built. A chance to reshape an entire industry, to prevent what had happened to me in another life from happening to others. I accepted immediately. The summit was held at a 5-star hotel in New York. 3,000 attendees, influencers, brand executives, platform representatives, investors, everyone who mattered in the beauty world. I took the stage in my signature style, tailored suit, bare face, hair in loose waves. The crowd went silent. For years, I began, the beauty industry has operated on a simple principle. Fake it till you make it. Fake your follower count. Fake your engagement. Fake your results. Fake your entire personality if necessary. And it works, sort of, for a while. Until the house of cards collapses and you're left with nothing real to hold on to. I'm here today to propose something radical. What if we just didn't fake it? What if influencers posted their real numbers, admitted their struggles, showed their actual faces? What if brands partnered with creators based on authentic engagement rather than inflated metrics? What if investors did real due diligence instead of believing whatever story sounded good? What if the whole industry was built on truth instead of lies? The applause started slowly, then built to a roar. I smiled, looking out at the sea of faces. Some bare, some made up, all listening. Change starts with individual choices, I continued. Choose to be honest about your numbers. Choose to create original content. Choose to lift others up instead of tearing them down. Choose to be yourself, even when being yourself is less profitable than being someone else's copy. Because at the end of the day, the only thing you really have is your authenticity. Everything else can be taken away. After the speech, the reception was overwhelming. People wanted photos, wanted advice, wanted to share their stories of struggling with authenticity in a fake-it-till-you-make-it world. One young woman, maybe 19, approached me nervously. Ms. Morrison, I just wanted to say thank you. I've been considering starting a beauty channel, but I was so worried about competing with all the established creators. Your speech made me realize I don't have to be like them. I can just be me. I smiled at her. What's your angle? What makes you different? I'm a biology major. I want to do beauty content, but from a scientific perspective, explaining ingredients, chemical reactions, skin biology, but I thought it might be too boring. It's not boring. It's unique. Own it. There's an audience for that, I promise. She lit up. Really? Really? In fact, I pulled out my phone. Email me. Beauty Basics might be interested in partnering with you for educational content. As she walked away, practically floating, I felt it. The satisfaction of helping someone avoid the mistakes I'd made, of giving someone the support I'd never had. That was the real revenge, I realized. Not destroying Grace, not accumulating wealth, not even proving everyone wrong. The real revenge was breaking the cycle, building a better industry, making sure the next generation of creators didn't have to claw their way up alone, didn't have to choose between authenticity and success, didn't have to die and get reborn to figure out their worth. The summit was covered extensively in media. The hashtag Authentic Beauty trended for 3 days. Multiple platforms announced new verification systems for authentic engagement. Several major brands pledged to audit their influencer partnerships. It wasn't perfect. The industry wouldn't change overnight, but it was a start. Grace called me the day after the summit. I watched your keynote. It was incredible. Thanks. I kept thinking what you said about being yourself, about authenticity being the only thing that matters. She paused. I wish I'd learned that lesson earlier, before I wasted so many years. You were young. We both were. Yeah, but you figured it out. I didn't. Grace. I chose my words carefully. You figured it out eventually. That's what matters. Some people never do. Do you think... She hesitated. Do you think we could have been closer? If I hadn't been so obsessed with competing with you? In my past life, we'd never had this conversation. We'd never had the chance. Grace had been too busy being successful on my stolen foundation, and I'd been too busy dying. In this life, we'd both learned, me through literal rebirth, her through hard, slow failure, that authenticity mattered more than success. That being yourself, even when yourself was ordinary, was better than being a pale copy of someone extraordinary. Maybe, I said. But maybe we needed the distance to become who we are. Maybe. She laughed softly. God, when did we get so philosophical? When we stopped caring what other people thought. You never cared what people thought. If only she knew. In my past life, I'd cared desperately. Every view, every like, every comment had felt like validation or rejection. I'd measured my worth in engagement metrics and brand deals. I'd literally died from the stress of caring too much. But Grace didn't need to know that. No one did. I care, I said. Okay. I just care about the right things now. 32 years old, net worth, $2.3 billion, beauty. Basics, industry leader in ethical beauty education. Personal brand, authentic, influential, respected. Personal life, messy but mine. Dating a documentary filmmaker who found my bare face fascinating and my business acumen sexy. Living in a home I'd designed myself, filled with art and books and comfortable furniture. Speaking engagements on 3 continents. A TED Talk with 50 million views, a second book in the works, and every morning, the same ritual. Wake up, look in the mirror, smile at my bare face. No burgundy eyeliner, no mask, no one else's stolen identity, just Lily Morrison. Self-made billionaire, industry disruptor. And in a way no one else would ever know. Survivor of death, master of revenge, winner of a game played across 2 lifetimes. Grace came to my house for dinner one night, her boyfriend in tow. We cooked together, her teaching me technique, me providing expensive ingredients and wine. We laughed about Mom's latest Facebook posts. We planned a joint charity event for culinary and itpansasal, beauty education. We were never going to be best friends, but we'd become something better. 2 women who'd learned to value themselves instead of comparing themselves to each other. As they left, Grace hugged me tight. Love you, sis. Love you too. And I meant it. Not the desperate, people-pleasing love of my first life, where I'd given and given until there was nothing left, but something steadier, healthier, real. 5 years later, I sold my majority stake in Beauty Basics for $4 billion, not because I needed the money, but because the company had grown beyond needing me. It was self-sustaining, ethical, successful. My job was done. I used the money to start a venture capital firm focused on authentic, ethical startups. I funded the kinds of businesses I'd wished existed when I was starting out. Companies that valued substance over flash, long-term impact over short-term profit, truth over marketing spin, and I finally let myself slow down. I moved to a beach house in Malibu, learned to surf, read books for pleasure instead of business insights. Dated my filmmaker seriously, then broke up amicably when we realized we wanted different futures. Made peace with the idea that I might never get married or have kids, and that was okay. I'd lived 2 lives. That was enough. Grace's restaurant expanded to 3 locations. She published a cookbook that became a bestseller. She married her sous chef and had twins, a boy and a girl, who she brought to Sunday dinners at our parents' house. I was Aunt Lily, the fun one who brought expensive gifts and told stories about meeting celebrities. The one the kids thought was cool because she'd been on TV. Not the tragic figure who died at 26, alone and betrayed. Not the ruthless businesswoman who'd built an empire on revenge. Just Aunt Lily, who looked young for her age because she'd always taken good care of her skin. Who smiled easily because she had nothing to prove. Who was improbably and completely happy. On my 40th birthday, I threw a party. Not a fancy celebrity thing, but a real party. Close friends, family, people who'd been there for me when it mattered. Grace gave a toast. To my sister, Lily, who taught me that the best thing you can be is yourself, even when it takes you years to figure out who that is. Everyone laughed and raised their glasses. I smiled, looking around at the people I loved, the life I'd built, the peace I'd earned. No one knew the full story. No one knew about the first life, the death, the rebirth. No one knew that every success I'd achieved was built on the ashes of a previous failure. And that was fine. Some victories were meant to be private. I touched my bare face, the face I'd learned to love, the face I'd made my fortune with, the face that was completely and authentically mine. To authenticity, I said, raising my glass, the only revenge worth having. They drank. They celebrated. They never knew they were toasting the end of a story that had taken 2 lifetimes to complete. But I knew, and that was enough. Years passed. I turned 50, then 55, retired from active business and focused on philanthropy and advisory work. Traveled the world, wrote a memoir, carefully edited to exclude the rebirth part. Became a fixture in lists of successful female entrepreneurs who'd changed their industries. Grace's kids grew up. Her restaurant became a legacy business. She and I grew closer in that comfortable way of siblings who've finally stopped competing. Our parents aged. We cared for them together. Mom, in her 70s, finally apologized for always comparing us as kids. I thought competition made you stronger, she said. I didn't realize I was hurting you both. It's okay, Mom, Grace said. And it was. Because we'd both moved past it. Had learned in our own ways and our own time that our mother's approval wasn't the prize we'd thought it was. The prize was self-acceptance, self-knowledge, the courage to be imperfect and real. I'm 63 now. My hair is silver, which I wear long and natural. My face has lines earned from smiling, from sun, from living. I've never had plastic surgery or Botox. I still don't wear makeup, and I'm still beautiful. Not in the conventional social media perfect way, but in the way that confidence and contentment make everyone beautiful. In the way that living your truth marks your face with character. Grace is 61, still running her restaurant, still married, still content with her small but meaningful success. We have dinner twice a month now. Sometimes we talk about the old days, the competition, the resentment, the eventual reconciliation. Do you ever regret how things turned out? She asked me last month. I thought about my first life, the stolen ideas, the betrayal, the early death. Then about this life, the rebirth, the revenge, the empire built on authenticity. Not for a second, I said honestly. Because here's the truth. My sister copied my eyeliner style. In my first life, it destroyed me. In my second life, I stopped wearing makeup entirely and still looked better. Not because I was naturally prettier, though I was. Not because I had better skin, though I did. But because I'd learned something she never had in my first life and took years to learn in this one. You can't build a lasting success on someone else's foundation. You can copy techniques, steal ideas, even perfectly replicate someone's aesthetic. But you can't copy the intangible thing that makes someone successful, the authenticity, the drive, the willingness to fail and learn and grow. Grace had spent her first timeline copying me and succeeding because she was ruthless enough to steal credit for my work. I spent my second timeline being myself and succeeding because I finally understood my own worth. In the end, that made all the difference. Not revenge, really, not in the petty sense, just the sweet, simple victory of living well. of being yourself so completely that copies become irrelevant, of looking in the mirror and liking what you see without any makeup at all. I'm in my Malibu house watching the sun set over the Pacific. My life is quiet now, peaceful. I consult occasionally, mentor young entrepreneurs, donate to causes I believe in, but mostly I just exist, happily, authentically. The doorbell rings. It's Grace carrying wine and her famous lemon cake. "Thought we could catch up," she says. We settle on my deck, glasses in hand, watching the waves. "Do you remember when we were kids?" Grace says. "And you tried to teach me how to do winged eyeliner?" Vaguely. I could never get it right. I was so frustrated. She laughs. "I spent years trying to copy your technique, thinking that was the secret to success." Was it? No. She looks at me, her face, still lovely, now lined with age, open and honest. The secret was figuring out I didn't need to do winged eyeliner at all. I needed to find my own thing. And you did. Eventually. She raises her glass. "Thanks to you. You did it yourself, Grace. I just stopped being the thing you were copying." She laughs. That's one way to put it. We drink our wine and watch the sun disappear into the ocean. Two sisters who took very different paths to the same conclusion. Authenticity is the only thing worth having. One of us learned it through death and rebirth. One learned it through years of failure and self-discovery, but we both learned it, and that, in the end, is the real happy ending. Not revenge, not victory, not even success, just the simple, hard-won piece of being exactly who you are, no makeup required.